All right. Well, welcome everyone to our webinar series. My name is Carlos Jimenez. I'm the manager of writing support. And this is our presentation for 30 practices for better writing. So this is split up into two parts here. We'll cover the first 15 here, and then the second half in a couple of weeks, we will cover the second half. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. We have a PowerPoint presentation, and we'll let you know the agenda and introduce ourselves here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. All right, just to introduce you to our team. So I'm Carlos Jimenez. I'm the manager of writing support here. Also, I manage the dissertation completion process, so the APA review. So if there are any doctoral students there, once you pass your final defense, you kind of come to my team to help you to publish the dissertation. But I'm also on the WC Online writing consultation schedule. You can see my weekly availability. And I'll pass it over to Julie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Carlos. My name's Julie Stigmeyer, and I'm the assistant manager of writing support. And looking forward to sharing these tips with you today. Gina, would you like to share?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Regina Meister. I'm the Associate Director of Writing Support, and I'm really glad that you've shown up, and we're excited to discuss writing itself and ways that you can improve your writing. So welcome.
All right. So just want to cover the objectives or goals for today and the second session. So our first objective, by the end of this series, you'll have 30 practices to use, and really could do this daily to just to help improve your writing in a number of different areas. Right. If you're just joining us, if you could mute your mic there, just so we avoid the background noise. Thank you. All right. Our second objective, just want you to become more aware of each step. So we'll break down these steps. Some of them will have some demonstrations, and then our third objective is to do some practice. So we do have a couple. We'll see how the time goes, but we do have at least one writing prompt. If you have something handy to write with, that would be a good idea to get something. Maybe have a document, or even just a pen and pad, just so you can jot down some writing. So we will do some of that practice a little bit later on. All right, but now I'm going to turn it over to sorry. So our agenda, we kind of broke up these practices into some different pieces. So we have the first set is kind of focusing on before we even begin writing, right? How do we come into our mindset and just before even taking on that endeavor, right? Then we focus on reading. So reading as a writer, so analyzing text, observing, in order to be better informed, right, and to have that knowledge. And then we sequence over to researching, pre-writing, then some writing, and then revising and editing. So all of these steps involved in the writing process, we will cover over the course of these two sessions. All right, so we'll start with before you begin writing and considering our mindset, and I'll hand it over to Gina, who's going to focus on our first steps.
Hello. So one of the first things you want to think about is just getting yourself into the mindset of writing. And research has shown, and this is actually evidence-based, that what we refer to as metacognition can really help to increase our understanding and our skill set in a variety of different subject areas. And metacognition in the writing process, which is basically understanding about the writing process, actually will increase your skills. So the more that writers reflect on their writing and their writing process, the stronger a writer they become. So the task is to reflect on your writing process by writing a paragraph about it after completing each writing assignment. And think about what part of the writing process worked well for you, why, and where did you struggle in the piece, and what would you do differently the next time that you write? And then keep a note of every strategy that has helped you to overcome some of those challenging places in writing, and really keep them almost as if they were like a booklet for yourself to refer back to. So increasing that awareness, keeping a journal about your writing process, also very, very effective in helping to increase your writing skills. And the next part that I just wanted to share with you is to talk a little bit about the writing process itself. So if you can see, this is a really great graphic of the very different steps in writing. They're iterative, meaning that they will repeat sometimes several times over. But as you can see, we start with pre-writing, which is where we start to form ideas. We may get some ideas about how we might like to start organizing things. We read, we start to digest more so that we can start to formulate ideas into a bigger picture. And then we start to do the drafting, and that's where we start to organize and refine our ideas. We have more of a structure. We actually have a more involved outline or a sense of actually the structure of the paper. And then we start to actually write and draft. And then as we complete that step, we might get peer reviews. So someone that you know who you're getting feedback from, or from the writing support office. And then that will also help you to redraft and revise your paper. And then you'll start editing after that step, which is more of a fine tuning of sentence level issues and APA and grammar and mechanics. So you kind of leave that until last. And then that's when you'll get to the point where you submit your paper, either to your professor, or if you're looking to publish a paper, you might send it out to a journal to get published. So those are the different steps that we go through in writing.
It's okay. Thanks, baby.
And then the next step is actually mindfulness. And mindfulness is a very helpful thing when we're approaching any task that especially can give us some anxiety. So before beginning your writing, you can take just a few minutes to meditate, focusing on your breath and your body. And we have a task here where we give a suggestion for how you might go about doing that. You can time yourself for about 5 minutes and just straighten your back, put your feet flat on the floor, or rest your arms on your lap, and close your eyes and just start focusing on the breathing by inhaling very deeply and exhaling very deeply to the count of 10. That will help to clear your mind if you do that for about 5 minutes. And it helps you to be in the moment and be less worried about what's going to happen with your writing, but just being present with it. And now we're on to step 3. And I think that is Julie, yes?
Yes, yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Gina. So our third tip, these are all meant to be like bite-sized tips that you can consider, and we will be sharing the tasks and the little blurbs of information with you toward the end of our time together. So these are all thoughts that we're going through on before you start writing. So another one for you to just keep in mind is I've written professionally in the past, and I read this great book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And you can see there's a link here to her website. And she recommends this practice of writing every day, 3 pages, handwritten by hand on a notebook without stopping. The very first thing you get up, you write grocery list, tasks for the day, poetry, song lyrics, or anything. And you don't worry about grammar. You don't censor yourself, nothing. And so it's just a way to try to alleviate any anxiety that you may feel about a writing project when you're doing something that's higher stakes. So this is another approach to thinking about how to really, before you start writing, what are some things that can make writing a little easier? And we can go on to the next one. Thanks. The next one is to reframe your mindset. So be aware of what might be holding you back. What negative thoughts could you reframe when you begin a writing project? So instead of the narrative that this is impossible, I'm a horrible writer, you could focus on process and growth. What will I learn through this process? How will I grow? And just reframing your mindset in that way can help you to lower the stakes again on your writing task, and give you just a sense of this is a process. It's not an all or nothing. It's not a black or white. So some of those things, so the task with this one is a favorite of mine, which I've been doing lately. So the question is, if you were just assigned a task, writing task, what would your initial thoughts be about the project? Do you have certain rules you might have that you create that may not be working for you? So something like, in my mind, I think the first draft has to be perfect. And that pressure you put on yourself with that so-called rule might be holding you back. So I like this prompt because it helps you to recognize what may those rules be, and then how can you reflect back on those so you know how to better approach your writing. Okay, and then the next section, so that was all about before you write. The next section is about reading as a writer. And the first one is to read every day. And research has shown that recreational reading, so just reading for fun among college students, has been associated with increased coping skills for mental health. So this is, reading is great for you. And then implications for your writing is that reading and writing have a reciprocal beneficial effect on each other. So the more and better you read, the more and better you write, and so on. And so that's why I put this little image of the Mobius strip in the corner. This is beyond my understanding of math, but it's a geometrical object where it's like this never-ending loop. And so it's a surface that can be formed by doing a half twist on a paper strip, and then it's like this infinity. So I've always liked that image to think about reading and writing and their strong connection. And so you could see the task there is just challenging yourself to read something you're curious about. And number 6 is another study I looked at said that media multitasking while reading or studying can lead to difficulty recalling information. So if you are reading on your computer, for example, and you get an alert that you have an email or a text, or there's a notification from Google Calendar or something like that, that can actually break your concentration to the point where you then have difficulty recalling the information you read. So instead of reading from a computer or any device that may have notifications, try to come up with a different solution. You could use a printed copy of whatever you're reading. I recently got this, I'll show you, this is my little thing. This is a Kindle Scribe that has no notifications. It's just a writing tool, just like a journal, but it's digital. So there are different options. And so I just encourage you to think about avoiding that media multitasking. And then in the task, try it, try doing, writing in a different way with your hand or without any distractions, and then reflect, does this feel differently? Does this make me more focused? Does it help me to recall information? So that could be the task that you could take away from this one. And then I think that's it.
All
I
right.
think, yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah. So I have the next few steps here. And you know that in finding your place, you know, we all kind of have our own process. You'll kind of find what environment works better for you, you know, but definitely avoiding those distractions, right, is key there. So the next few slides are focused a couple more on reading. So it may sound, you know, obvious, but, you know, we want to, if we are trying to write in a particular style or in a particular convention, reading, you know, certain texts that are in that area are going to help us. They're going to inform us, right, and to inform us about those expectations, right? So, for example, you know, if all of our papers here at the university are to be in this APA style, APA format, we would benefit from reviewing and analyzing those peer-reviewed journal articles, right? Those are deemed the scholarly sources, right? Because they have gone through this peer review process. They're published in academic journals, right? So if we are trying to write in that way, then reading about, you know, and analyzing that work is going to help us, right? Same thing with dissertations, right? We would want to, if we're doing some dissertation work, reading, you know, effectively written dissertations is going to benefit us. So the task here is to, you know, identify a particular genre in which, you know, you'd like to improve. What type of writing are you trying to master? Then maybe try to find a piece of that writing in that genre, read it. In this context, it does say reading without an agenda, right? But as we get further involved in that reading process, in that close reading process, we might shift to some analysis, right? So the next step, the next step here is looking at the text itself, right? And analyzing some of those patterns, right? So as we're reading, we're observing, even annotating, right, where we see certain language being used, right, and certain sentence structure. How are they integrating sources? How are they introducing the ideas, right? And, you know, a big thing, if your goal is to become more proficient in APA, then, you know, we would want to be mindful of how the authors are using APA, right? How are they especially citing and referencing their sources? And this might vary, right? It might vary depending on the academic journal, right? Some of those journals have a different process. It's not necessarily quote APA style, right? So you do want to use your discretion there when you see how some sources are citing, maybe they're using footnotes or they have a different system. So you want to be aware, oh, that's not APA, right? But in a lot of other areas, they are, you know, using that. But you can also look at other aspects of the text. So the task would be, you know, with that same piece of writing that you had in the previous step, you know, analyze and identify some of those elements that stand out to you. How is the tone reflected? How is the vocabulary used or the sentence structure? How are they integrating research? And write about that. You can write about that or maybe even annotate the actual text, right? So we have an example here. So this was a paragraph from the source there, using scaffolding to teach phonemic awareness in preschool and kindergarten. So this was the article. Notice the year is from 2009. So that's important when we analyze APA, right? Because some of the APA citations, like you'll notice there at the top there, Wood, Bruner, and Ross, where now it would be Wood et al., right? So we do want to be aware of when the time, right, the text was written. But I kind of broke down this paragraph and just highlighted a few areas that we can be mindful of. So, you know, the first sentence, right, that's that topic sentence. It's introducing the main idea about scaffolding, right? It's providing a clear definition of that term. So the term is scaffolding. And notice how once that term is established, right, we see it used in other contexts and in different ways. So scaffolding is the ing form, the noun. Then they're using it, scaffolds are comments, so they're turning it into a noun, right? 3 levels of scaffolding. There's that ing again, that provides scaffolding. So once that term has been defined, right, the writer is now able to use it more fluidly in context, right, because they have already established that definition, right? Also, if you notice here with this definition, the authors are emphasizing that this did not just come from them, right? They are citing the sources. In this case, there's 2 sources. We have Vygotsky, right, a well-known linguist and educator and author, right? And then they have another source here, Wood, Bruner, and Ross. So this is an example of what we call sentence level synthesis, because they are using 2 sources to support the claim or the definition that they're making, right? So that is an effective element as we're integrating research, integrating ideas to develop that synthesis there, right? Notice this is Wood, Bruner, and Ross. Like I mentioned, this is from the 6th edition. So we would be mindful that it would be a different citation if we were going to write our paper, right? And then notice another citation there that they're building on. Notice also the placement of the citations, right, earlier on in the paragraph when they're first introducing those ideas, right? When you're first introducing some ideas that are not that are outside sources, then we're integrating those citations. Also in yellow, wanted to highlight what's known as the hook and eye technique, and that just helps us to be able to easily cycle through almost each sentence, and we can see the subject of the sentence being introduced. So we have teachers in the first sentence provide that allows children. So we have teachers and children, and as we kind of scan through the rest of the paragraph, we can see those themes, you know, those subjects be introduced consistently, right? So in the second, we have teachers, we have each child. As we scan down, we have children again. In another sentence, teachers, preschool classroom. So it's the context for the teaching, and the teacher and her. So there's a continuous subject, right, that's being connected from sentence to sentence that really helps to provide that cohesion across the sentences, right? A couple of other things like transitions. So the author is using transitions, for example, right, when they are providing some particular examples in contrast to show some differences there. So those transitions are integrated there to link ideas, right? There's also a couple of other APA, like the italics of the word toes. So that is a linguistic example in that word. So they're italicizing that, another feature of APA. And also the final sentence. So we notice the final sentence of this paragraph, it kind of leads the reader and transitions into the next section, which the next section is, I believe, a transcript, right? So it's leading them into the next idea, the next section, and also it's reinforcing, it's kind of bookending, right, as they end with the term that they just defined, right? So just this small paragraph, we can, you know, do our analyzing just to get a sense of how, you know, that those ideas are constructed, the voice, the vocabulary that's being used, right, and some of those features there with grammar and sentence structure. And then this is my citation for this source. All right, so shifting to a new section here, when we're looking at researching, right? We know that in order to write academic papers, when we're bringing in sources, we need to make sure that we're doing our diligent research, right? So one key area, right, that we are going into and investigating is using the Pepperdine Libraries database. So there are some links here. We won't have time to go to them, but there is a video here from our lead librarian, Maria Brahma, from the West LA campus. And she provides a small tutorial of kind of how to use keywords, and depending on your topic, I think she does like an education topic, but she goes kind of through the process using, you know, in that video to show you kind of, how to go about in searching for a particular topic that you're trying to investigate, right? So the task would be here, after viewing the video, go on the database, maybe find some sources related to a topic that you're interested in. So this could be related to a class, or it just could be something that you are thinking about that you would like to know more about, right? And so we challenge you to kind of just go and kind of test out that process, or maybe you've already done that before, right? So you might have some familiarity with it. But as you pull in maybe about 3 sources, think about the concepts from the topic, maybe any variables, target population. Those could be some of those search terms that you use for that particular investigation. Also, once we have those sources, sometimes it can get very complex in the types of studies that we read about, right? Especially the methodology sections. It's using complex terminology. So this process here, I've always found it helpful, especially when we're gathering and compiling a number of sources. Maybe we're doing something like a literature review, or just trying to make sense of what we read, and we're gathering, ideas across, from different articles. So here's one way where we can not necessarily have to read word for word from beginning to end, all of those pages in a particular article, but just, kind of focusing on certain sections in the article. In this case, it would be like a research study, where an article where there was some type of research done that would have, maybe introduction, methods, results, discussion, that kind of sectioning. But to get the gist, or just to have a general understanding, right, of what the article is about before you can make, then you can make your decision and evaluate it more closely, whether it can contribute to your topic, or, it can be used. You can follow this process here. So, obviously reading the abstract, that's going to give you that clear summary. It's going to tell you everything, all the steps that were taken to accomplish the research endeavor, and it also gives you some background about that. Also, the first few paragraphs, which are going to bring in the introduction, usually highlight a problem or some issue that the article is addressing. Then we want to shift to the last paragraph before the methods. So that's usually going to give us the research questions. It'll outline the purpose statement, maybe some hypotheses there, right? And then moving to the discussion section is going to give us a better understanding of those findings. And so kind of following this process will help maybe to be able to scan through some multiple sources, where we might get mired in just focusing on one article and trying to read that word for word. This will help us to kind of maybe focus on that breadth of knowledge, right? Where we are kind of analyzing, multiple texts. So the task would be to choose, one of those sources that you found in the previous step from the Pepperdine Library site, and then following these steps to get the gist or a general understanding. And then, you can, take some notes there as well, as you're doing that process, right? All right, so kind of that was a little bit on the researching component there. And so now we're shifting, getting closer and closer to the actual writing, right? Now we're doing some pre-writing. So, how do we get started in this pre-writing? Well, if it's something that you have to write for as an assignment, right? For a paper, whether it's an assignment or just understanding our goals, right? We want to make sure that we understand that prompt or understand that rubric. So it's important that we are really reading those instructions carefully, and so that we have that complete understanding. And one way to kind of make sure that we're covering all those points in the prompt is to we can separate each step and highlight those main verbs. So any assignment that you might have, for any class, you might try this process. And we do have a little demonstration here. Here's the sample prompt, right? So this is a particular assignment for one of these classes. So the prompt is to read a biographical or autobiographical text that summarizes the organization and leadership philosophy of an exemplary leader. Write an in-depth analysis of the leader and their approach to organizing and leading. Discuss this leader's approach, including the philosophy, specific methods for organization, design, and directing people and results of this approach. Discuss what can be learned from this person's leadership and critique the leader's philosophy and approach based on the knowledge you've gained from this course. So there's quite a few steps involved, right? And it might seem a little overwhelming right now as we're reading through this, but if we look at each of the verbs, the main verbs in the sentence, then that can help us to construct an outline or being able to identify each step that's expected to be accomplished in this process. So if we were to break down that prompt, here's an example of how we might do that. So the overall assignment, so there was some reading involved, but the actual writing is asking to write an in-depth analysis of the leader and their approach to organizing and leading. So we have about 6 different steps here, and notice how it's broken down: discussing the leader's philosophy, discussing the leader's specific methods for organization design, discussing their approach for directing people, the results of this leader's approach, also what can be learned from the leader's approach, and then there is another element of critiquing the leader's philosophy and approach. So if we, kind of do this a little bit more systematically with the prompts, right, then we will ensure that we are covering what we need to cover, right, and we're meeting those assignments expectations, right? So, we encourage you to kind of try this with some of your assignments in your courses, just to be sure that you have a complete understanding of what's expected for those assignments. Right, and I think I'm going to shift over to Gina, who will talk to us about some more pre-writing activities.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to talk about brainstorming. I love the pre-writing process, and I love brainstorming and all of the different activities that you can do to kind of generate ideas. So brainstorming is very low stakes, it's fun, and it can keep you from staring at the dreaded blank page. So they say that there's nothing harder for a writer than staring at a blank piece of paper, so or a blank screen. So this will get ideas right onto the page right away. So you can do a list, anything that comes to your mind. You look at the prompt, you have this assignment, just start brainstorming. Any ideas that come to mind, put them down in a list, and don't censor, don't erase, don't go back and consider, oh, do I really want this one or not? Just list any idea that comes to mind and don't censor yourself. Be outrageous. Think about outrageous ideas. Be curious. Something that really struck your interest in class that you've never really heard of before. And then get all those ideas down. And now let that topic that seems to jump out at you on that list be the one that you choose. And write that idea in the center of a blank page, and then jot down any related ideas to it. You can kind of create a circle around that and then start to have little branching out ideas that are related to it. And you can draw then lines that indicate connections between ideas. So that's referred to as clustering, where you have that one idea, and then you have little outshootings of clusters of ideas related to the topic. There's also mind mapping software out there that does the same thing. One is called XMind, and it's free, although you can get a paid version and do the same thing with it. I know someone who wrote her entire dissertation through doing this clustering and mind mapping, even her literature review. She did the whole dissertation that way, and she said it was fantastic. So really fun thing to think about. The next thing to try is free writing and looping. And I actually did free writing yesterday with a student. She said that she had writer's block. So I said, well, let's try some free writing. So she sat and I timed her for 10 minutes. I said, write nonstop about the topic. Don't judge it. Don't go back and erase. Again, don't censor yourself, just anything that comes to mind. And she was able to generate, after 3 10-minute sessions, she generated 4 pages of writing. And then she was able to go back and we looked at it. And then what you'll do is to go back and then circle any ideas that really fascinate you, underline ideas that you want to keep, and then go back and free write on that. looking back at the writing that you've done will help you to identify the strong points that you want to keep, and then you can go from there and build. So it's a really fun process that gets the ideas down, that helps you to generate more thoughts about it and gets you going. And then you're not staring at a blank page anymore, which is really nice. And then the next step is to do some outlining. And when I talk about outlining, I think Julie and Carlos and I all agree that it doesn't have to be that really formal, kind of intimidating Roman numerals outline. It can be bullet points. What are the main ideas that I've gotten from the different things that I've been reading? Make those bullet points. You might mention 3 or 4 of them and have those bulleted points. And then start to think about, okay, what goes under each of these points? And then you have little sub-bullets and so on. So it doesn't have to be that really intimidating structure that we're used to seeing when we think of an outline. So you just want to identify some of those key points of the brainstorming and free writing and the looping activities that you've done, and begin to divide it up into sections that forms an outline. Okay, and then we're going to go into the next section. Let's see, that was number 14. So I think we have just one more activity. And Julie, I think you're going to take it from here, right?
Yeah, thank you, Gina. So you may be thinking, wait, we're on number 15 and you're just starting writing now? What's going on? Well, it gives all of these tips kind of give you an idea that reading is, it's a process. Writing is a process, and it involves reading, researching, and various different tasks. So, this is also an invitation to come to the next part of this series so that you can get all of the information on writing and revising. So our first tip under the writing section is to write a crummy first draft. And this idea comes from Anne Lamott's book. It's a classic writing book called Bird by Bird, Some Instructions on Writing and Life. And the idea here is, like Gina was saying, when we have a blank page in front of us, this is very intimidating. We don't know where to begin. So one thing we can do is just expect that the first draft of anything we write is going to need revision. And then you just have the freedom to go ahead and put your ideas down. So sometimes we build up this idea of our first draft being idealized, perfect, cream of the crop. And instead, if you just know that it's going to require revision, it's a process that can sometimes help you to get started easier. So those are the first 15 tips, and we're gonna shift over now to some writing. And then what we'd like to do is, after you write for a couple of minutes, we'll get into breakout rooms so you can discuss. And so the writing prompt we're going to give you right now is this. So think back to slide number 1 that Gina shared. And then, which is, there's this writing process diagram here. Identify a past writing project and consider the steps that you took to complete it. Were the steps similar or different from the writing process described in tip 1? How does reflecting on this help you to consider future writing tasks? So that is the writing prompt. And what we're going to do, it's 12:40. So we'll take about 5 minutes and just write together. And at 12:45, we will get you into breakout rooms and you can discuss what you wrote.